Tonight, criminal breach of trust. A former candidate for mayor is charged by police. Deceased. Remains located of a man missing since 2023 and trending downward. Fewer British Columbians dying from drug overdoses. Good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight with charges being laid against a former candidate for mayor in Dawson Creek. Shaylee Wilbur is facing a charge of criminal breach of trust. The allegations stem from her time at the Aubert Economic Society. Wilbur was the executive director at the registered charity from December of 2021 to September 2022. It's been alleged she used the nonprofit's credit card for unauthorized spending in the amount thought to be around $45,000. Wilbur was served with a summons on May the 6th. Now, it's important to note that none of the allegations have been proven in a court of law. Back in April, we reported Wilbur was fined just under $5,000 by Elections BC. The former three-term city councillor was accused of accepting political donations from a number of businesses. She claimed they were from individuals. We reached out to Wilbur for comment, however, we did not hear back from her. A man reported missing just over 2 years ago has been found deceased. In April of 2023, RCMP asked for the public's help in locating Jordan Nand, the Fort St. John RCMP saying at the time that they believed Nand was traveling to Kamloops. However, he didn't contact his family when he arrived. He was wanted at the time on an arrest warrant, and Mounties believe he was trying to evade police. Nand had ties to Fort St. John and Fort Nelson. There's no word on how he may have died or where he was found. Overdose deaths in BC are trending downward. That, according to the BC Coroner Service. In March, 143 British Columbians died from overdose. That's down 33% compared to the same time last year, and it's the 6th straight month fewer than 160 British Columbians have died from toxic drugs. In the Northern Health Zone, there were 12 fatalities in March. People between the ages of 20 and 59 account for nearly 70% of all deaths. Well, now to a police investigation that the BC Conservatives are calling a witch hunt. A senior bureaucrat ordered an RCMP probe into how a high-profile opposition critic got a leaked document about the NDP's Safe Drug Supply Program. CTV's Rob Buffum has the story.
Changes to safer supply laws in BC were triggered when this leaked document from the Health Ministry acknowledging widespread trafficking of the drugs was made public by Conservative MLA Eleanor Sturckow in February. Sturckow, the public safety critic, recently faced a police interview amid an RCMP investigation into the leak.
It's our duty to hold this government accountable, and having this information safely and securely brought forward by members of the public is at the heart of an MLA's duty to represent the public.
The investigation was directed by the Director of Police Services, Glenn Lewis. The public safety minister in charge of police in BC and Lewis's superior denies he knew about the investigation beforehand and says the decision was made independently and he approves of it.
I certainly approve of an investigation being conducted into the information that was provided by her.
But Begg's boss, the Premier, was seemingly less approving of the probe, saying police time should better be spent chasing criminals selling drugs or pharmacies giving kickbacks, not a whistleblower flagging a problem, something the NDP's legislation from 2019 was supposed to protect against.
I really hope that there is more effort going into investigating these pharmacies rather than anything related to the member and what she did in this House.
Opposition Leader John Rustad worries about broader chilling effects, including for the health community.
That they feel it is unsafe for them to speak out, whether it's doctors or whether it's nurses. They're telling us the stories, but they say we cannot speak, we cannot say anything. They're afraid.
The RCMP say the investigation isn't into Sturckow, but rather any police who leaked the document. EB says the government looked into it, but can't order the probe stopped.
Recognize effective opposition work. This was certainly a case of that. If I had had those documents on the other government, I wouldn't have hesitated.
Protecting her source, Sturckow says they're not police, adding she found the situation intimidating.
I felt worried. It is intimidating to receive, even for myself as a former police officer, when you hear that an anti-corruption unit wants to talk to you, it's not a great feeling.
Robert Buffum, CTV News.
And First Nations leaders sending a message to BC's Premier. They're telling David Eby to kill 2 bills aimed at fast-tracking projects in the province. The First Nations Leadership Council says the Premier has already turned down their request. Eby is urging them to trust the government, but the leaders say that's difficult because it didn't consult with them on the bills in the first place. Well, BC's infrastructure minister has already acknowledged that the NDP government made a mistake in not adequately consulting First Nations on Bill 15. However, Bowen Ma says the proposed bill neither changes environmental standards nor the constitutional rights of First Nations to be consulted on projects. Under the bill, projects to be fast-tracked would include building schools and hospitals, along with approving new energy projects. And a major deal in the oil and gas industry here in Northeast BC to tell you about tonight. Strathcona Resources has sold all of its Montney assets for about $2.84 billion Canadian. The company announcing 3 separate deals. The first sees its Ground Birch assets sold to Tourmaline for $291 million in common shares. Its Grand Prairie assets were sold to an unnamed company for about $850 million. The third deal sees ARC Resources purchase the Kakwa asset for approximately $1.7 billion. And Ambridge is selling its stake in its West Coast pipeline to a First Nations group in BC. The $715 million deal will see 36 First Nation territories receive long-term financial benefits from the 2,900-kilometer system. The First Nations group will get a 12.5% stake in the West Coast system. The pipeline stretches from here in Northeast BC to the Canada-US border. The purchase loan will be the first project backed by the Canadian Indigenous Loan Guarantee Corporation that was established last fall. With the persistent drought conditions in the forecast for the summer, the province is expecting to import power from the United States. It's what the BC government has been doing for the past 2 years. Clear and sunny skies mean not a lot of snow on the mountains. BC's latest water supply bulletin shows the snowpack sitting at about 71% of normal. Low snow levels could lead to issues with water availability, drought, and it often contributes to wildfires. Less water also equals less electricity. One expert says we may not be able to control the weather, but we can control BC's energy policy. So he's calling on the province to remove mandates for electric vehicles.
Import power, and the regime they put in place means it could end up putting money in the hands of Elon Musk, who frankly hasn't really indicated that he's a friend of Canada.
It comes as the province has approved 9 new Indigenous-led wind power projects to meet the growing demand for electricity. And the Site C Dam here in Northeast BC will also come online by the end of this year. From an emergency to a tragedy. That's how Manitoba premiers described the wildfire in his province after police confirmed the death of 2 people yesterday. Nearly 100 fires are burning across Manitoba and neighboring Saskatchewan, and tonight, thousands have been forced from their homes. Alex Carpa reports.
I'm in the community of Lac de Bonnie where the wildfire remains out of control at this time. It's about 4,000 hectares in size, but it's actually a little smaller than some of the other wildfires raging right across the province, but it's still been pretty devastating. The Reeve of Lac de Bonnie told us that 28 cottages and houses have been lost so far, but this doesn't include other structures like boathouses and docks that have been burned in the fire. It's also where RCMP confirmed the bodies of 2 people were found in the ashes. The province says over 1,000 people have been evacuated due to the wildfires, including many here in the Lac de Bonnie area. I spoke to one resident who said the evacuation has been very hard on him and his family.
We got evacuated once. We go to friends' places because they're helping us out. We brought all our stuff over, as in like sea-doos, boats, clothing, and next to know we're getting comfortable, and then 9 o'clock at night or so we get a notice of being evacuated again. So twice in one night kind of made things a little like, whoa, this is real.
Lac de Bonnie is not the only area dealing with wildfires right now. Northeast of here is Nopeming Provincial Park. There's an out-of-control fire which is 100,000 hectares in size. The Manitoba government has declared a state of emergency in Whiteshell Provincial Park, which is southeast of where I am right now, and the area itself is now close to residents and the public due to the wildfires. In a press conference earlier today, Premier Wab Kinew says he is urging Manitobans to change their plans for the upcoming long weekend.
Any fire that goes out of control, even in an area that's not dealing with wildfire, could potentially pull resources away from the front lines where we urgently need help.
The Premier also spoke about the loss of the 2 people here in Lac du Bonnet, and residents I spoke to described it as a complete tragedy.
Well, to the recent federal election where the leader of the Bloc Québécois wants voters to go back to the polls in a Quebec riding where the Liberal candidate won by a single vote. Yves-François Blanchet says if that doesn't happen, his party will take Elections Canada to court. The call comes after a woman in Terrebonne says her mail-in ballot was rejected due to an error on the part of Elections Canada. The agency says it's conducting a review of the system, but it adds the recounts results are final. When the House of Commons returns in about a week and a half, a federal budget will not be one of the items being voted on. Instead, the Liberals will be providing an economic statement this fall. There's plenty of a reaction to that decision from business leaders and the opposition. CTV's Judy Trin has more from Ottawa.
It's my pleasure on behalf of the Cabinet to sign this order to deliver that tax cut.
The Prime Minister is prioritizing a tax cut in uncertain times, but not putting together a budget this spring.
We were very disappointed.
The Conservative leader is criticizing Mark Carney's delay by using his own words against him.
Pierre Poilievre's answer to everything is a slogan and a tax cut.
He took great delight in saying that a slogan is not a plan. Well, a budget is a plan. And if he does indeed have a plan, if he does know what he's doing, then he would introduce a budget.
The government will deliver a fall economic statement, but a budget won't be seen until next year. That means it will be months before we see the full picture. The right-leaning Fraser Institute found that Canada's spending and debt load is growing at a higher pace than any other G7 nation. Over the last decade, Canada's spending has increased by 6 percentage points, while the debt burden has increased by more than 25 points.
You know, a lot of the actions that have been taken so far or suggested in their platform will likely result in even more deficits and debt and more spending.
These corporate leaders want to influence economic policy ahead of June's G7 summit. Some are willing to give Carney more time to draft his budget.
I don't think there's a specific grace period. I think let's see how the next 6 months go. I think lots of trade talk, lots of work to be done with our trading partners in the U.S. Let's see what happens there.
Mark Carney's Liberal government is still 2 seats shy of a majority. That means to deliver on its priorities this session, it will have to cooperate and negotiate with the opposition. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
And another concern for Carney's government is defense spending. NATO's debating Donald Trump's demand that member countries like Canada increase spending. NATO foreign ministers met in Turkey, where the Secretary General said alliance members need to do much more. Mark Rutte insists additional funds and military equipment are needed to deal with threats that are posed by Russia, China, as well as terrorist groups around the world. Trump wants spending threshold to be increased from the current 2% of GDP to 5%. That goal is not being met right now by 10 alliance countries, including Canada. A NATO summit is scheduled for next month. Well, researchers have determined that a copy of the Magna Carta owned by Harvard Law School is in fact a rare original made in 1327. The document is just one of 7 that still exist. A professor was studying unofficial copies of the Magna Carta when he came across a digitized version of this one. He realized it might be an original and began comparing it to the other originals. Well, that led to a further investigation. The Magna Carta has formed the basis of constitutions around the world. The Harvard Law School Library bought theirs in 1946, forget this, $27.50. All right, please do stay tuned. We'll be right back with a look at the weekend weather.